Imagine a world where leaving an unwanted infant to die on a hillside was not a heinous crime, but a rational, even morally acceptable act. Imagine a time when owning another human being, buying and selling them as property, was not an unspeakable evil, but the very foundation of an advanced civilization. Or picture a future where the merging of human and machine is considered not an ethical horror, but the next logical step in evolution. What defines good? What is evil? These seem like universal, eternal questions. Yet the answers, the very ideas of good and evil, have shifted, warped, and transformed across millennia like a vast, restless sea. What was once deemed a virtue might now be seen as a vice. A horrifying act might once have been sanctioned by the gods. We might assume our modern moral compass is fixed, an absolute truth, but history tells a far more unsettling and fascinating story. This is the hidden, shifting history of good and evil. For the earliest humans, morality wasn't codified in scrolls or divine commandments. It was etched into the brutal calculus of survival. What was good? Anything that ensured the tribe's continuance, courage in the hunt, sharing the spoils, protecting the young, cooperation in the face of saber-toothed tigers. Evil was anything that threatened the group, selfishness, betrayal, cowardice that jeopardized the collective. There was no abstract evil out there. There was just what worked and what didn't. The world was a mysterious, animate place filled with spirits of forest and river, benevolent if appeased, wrathful if offended. Moral transgressions might simply be seen as breaking a taboo, an act that upset the delicate balance between humanity and the powerful natural world, leading to a bad harvest or a failed hunt. Their justice was swift, often communal, ensuring tribal cohesion above all else. Then came civilization. As nomadic tribes settled into villages, then cities, and complex societies emerged, so too did more elaborate moral frameworks. In ancient Mesopotamia, a vast empire stretching across the Fertile Crescent, the idea of good and evil became intertwined with the will of capricious gods. Obedience to the divine, upholding the cosmic order, was paramount. Consider the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest surviving written legal codes, etched onto a towering stone stele over 3.5 millennia ago. Its famous principle, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, seems harsh by modern standards, but it represented a revolutionary step, the idea of justice as a reciprocal balance, not just arbitrary vengeance. It was about defining wrongs and prescribing specific, proportionate punishments, attempting to bring order to chaos. But even this code, meant to govern justice, was explicitly ordained by the god Shamash, a reflection of divine, not human morality. Across the desert, in ancient Egypt, the concept of ma'at reigned supreme. Ma'at was more than just justice. It was cosmic order, truth, balance, and righteousness. To live in accordance with ma'at was good. To defy it was evil, leading to chaos and imbalance. After death, the heart of the deceased was weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If found wanting, devoured by a monstrous beast. This belief imposed a profound moral accountability, guiding every pharaoh and peasant alike. But again, this was not a human-derived ethic. It was a divine imposition, a grand celestial blueprint for life. But what happens when human reason begins to question divine decree? What happens when different gods have different wills? Around the 8th to 3rd centuries BCE, a remarkable phenomenon occurred almost simultaneously across disparate civilizations, the Axial Age. From the valleys of ancient India to the bustling marketplaces of Greece, from the desert plains of Persia to the Yellow River in China, a profound shift in moral thinking emerged. Instead of morality being purely about tribal survival or the whims of local deities, a new idea began to surface: that there were universal, transcendent moral truths, accessible through reason or inner spiritual revelation, independent of local custom. In ancient Persia, the prophet Zoroaster introduced a revolutionary dualism, The cosmos was a battleground between Asha, truth, order, good, and Druj, falsehood, disorder, evil. This wasn't just a local god being grumpy. This was a cosmic war for the soul of the universe, and humans were active participants, aligning themselves with either good or evil through their thoughts, words, and deeds. Here, good and evil became absolute, opposing forces, a fundamental moral architecture for the world. In India, the rise of Buddhism and Jainism brought the concept of karma to the forefront. Good and evil acts weren't just about immediate consequences or divine judgment. They created a spiritual ledger that would determine one's fate in future lives. The emphasis shifted to internal purity, nonviolence, ahimsa, and compassion, not just for humans, but for all living beings. Imagine the radical shift. Now the harm you cause to a tiny insect could have profound moral implications for your own eternal journey. Meanwhile, in China, thinkers like Confucius emphasized an ethical system rooted in human relations and social harmony. Good was about benevolence, filial piety, respect for elders, and acting with integrity in one's community. Evil was disrupting this harmony, acting selfishly or failing in one's duties. It was a practical earthly morality focused on building a virtuous society. And then Greece. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They began to question everything. For them, good wasn't just what the gods commanded, it was something that could be discovered through reason. What was the good life? What virtues did a truly excellent human being possess? Plato, in his Republic, explored the ideal state, where justice wasn't just a legal concept, but an inherent quality of the soul and the city. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics proposed that virtue was a path to human flourishing, a balance between extremes. They laid the philosophical groundwork for deriving morality not from external divine revelation, but from human reason itself. This was a profound, dangerous idea. If humans could discern good through reason, what need was there for divine mediators? This axial age was a pivot. Good and evil became grander, more universal, more deeply embedded in the very fabric of existence or in the very potential of human reason. But the definitions still varied wildly. Was it about following a divine law, or accruing good karma, or living virtuously in a community, or discovering truth through rational inquiry? The answers were still as diverse as the cultures themselves. Then came the behemoths, the great monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Here, the idea of good and evil became absolute, divinely revealed, and often rigidly codified. Good was obedience to God's commandments, evil was transgression, sin. Heaven and hell became the ultimate arbiters, the eternal rewards or punishments for one's moral choices. Consider the dramatic narratives within these faiths. The fall of Adam and Eve, original sin, the temptation by a primordial evil. The idea of evil gained a singular, cosmic adversary, Satan or Iblis, a force not merely of chaos, but of active malevolent opposition to divine will. This gave the struggle between good and evil an epic, personal dimension. For a Christian during the Crusades, slaughtering infidels might be seen as a righteous act, fulfilling God's will to reclaim holy lands. For a Muslim defending against the invaders, it was a holy struggle against invaders. The definition of good became deeply entangled with religious identity and the ultimate goal of salvation or eternal damnation. This strong, absolute moral framework, driven by divine command, dominated for centuries. It brought immense social cohesion and provided clear moral guidelines, but it also brought rigid intolerance. The Inquisition, in the fervent pursuit of spiritual purity and the elimination of heresy, committed acts that would be considered utterly evil today, all in the name of the highest good. The fear of eternal damnation could be a powerful motivator for moral behavior, but also a terrifying tool for control. The next seismic shift arrived at the Enlightenment. Once more, human reason asserted itself, not as an aid to divine revelation, but as its potential replacement. Thinkers began to construct moral systems independent of God. Immanuel Kant, perhaps the most towering figure, argued for a categorical imperative, universal moral duties that applied to everyone, everywhere, simply because they were rational beings. His famous maxim, "Act only according to that maxim, whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law." Murder is evil because you cannot universally will a world where murder is acceptable. This was a radical break, placing the burden and glory of moral decision-making squarely on humanity's shoulders. But simultaneously, thinkers like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill proposed utilitarianism, the idea that the good action is the one that produces the greatest good for the greatest number. Morality became a calculation, a quest to maximize happiness and minimize suffering. This was a profoundly influential concept, shaping public policy, law, and social reform movements.
Imagine the debates. Is it good to sacrifice one for the many? The very definition of good became a practical, measurable outcome. The Enlightenment also gave birth to the concept of universal human rights, the idea that every individual, by virtue of being human, possesses inherent, inalienable rights to life, liberty, and dignity. This was a powerful new standard for good governance and evil oppression, laying the groundwork for modern international law and humanitarian efforts. But the 20th century delivered a brutal, horrifying plot twist to the Enlightenment's promise of reason and universal human rights. The grand narratives of good and evil, now seemingly grounded in human reason rather than divine command, faced unprecedented challenges. The rise of total war, industrial-scale genocide, and totalitarian regimes like Nazism and Soviet communism forced humanity to confront new depths of evil. How could nations, supposedly guided by reason and human rights, descend into such barbarity? The chilling concept of the banality of evil, coined by Hannah Arendt after observing the trial of Nazi official Adolf Eichmann, suggested that horrifying acts were not always perpetrated by demonic figures, but often by ordinary people caught up in bureaucratic systems, simply following orders. This was a terrifying realization. Evil wasn't just the cosmic adversary from religious texts or the direct transgression against rational duties. It could also be the mundane, unthinking participation in a destructive system. The 20th century forced a painful reevaluation. Was our modern definition of good and evil truly universal? Was reason enough to guarantee it? Today, in the 21st century, the shifting sands continue. Globalization, instant communication, and technological leaps are constantly challenging our inherited moral frameworks. The idea of good and evil is being redefined in real time. Environmental ethics. Is it evil to pollute a river if it provides jobs? Is it good to sacrifice economic growth for ecological preservation? The very idea of our moral responsibility now extends beyond humanity to the planet itself. Animal rights. Once seen merely as resources, animals are increasingly recognized as beings capable of suffering. Is it evil to consume meat? The line of moral consideration is expanding beyond our own species. Artificial intelligence ethics. As AI becomes more sophisticated, we grapple with entirely new questions. Is it evil to create a conscious AI? What are its rights? What is the moral responsibility of an algorithm? The digital age. Cybercrime, misinformation, online harassment, these are new forms of evil that exploit the vulnerabilities of our interconnected world, pushing us to define new ethical boundaries. Moral relativism versus universalism. The globalized world, with its incredible diversity of cultures and beliefs, forces a constant tension. Are there truly universal standards of good and evil that apply to everyone, or is morality always culturally relative? The story of good and evil is far from over. It is a testament to humanity's endless struggle to define itself, to navigate the complexities of coexistence, and to impose meaning on a vast, indifferent universe. From the simple taboos of ancient tribes to the grand ethical systems of philosophers and religions, from the chilling banality of 20th century horror to the cutting-edge dilemmas of AI, our understanding of good and evil has been a constant, evolving conversation. It is a conversation with the divine, with reason, with our fellow humans, and, ultimately, with ourselves. What we define as good and what we define as evil shapes our laws, our societies, and the very future we build. The question isn't settled, and perhaps that's precisely where its hidden history lies, in its ongoing, ever-shifting, deeply human exploration.
The questions we've explored today about the shifting idea of good and evil are just a glimpse into the vast, ever-shifting landscape of human thought. If you're eager to uncover more of these, then consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue to unravel these hidden histories. Thank you.